Another cool thing we can do with text is type on a path. So let's say I click on my type tool and I hold down. We see we have the type tool. That's when we drag out a text box and start typing. Okay, I'm going to delete this because we don't need it. But the other option you'll see here is type on a path. Now to type on a path, you need to have a path. Because there's no path, nothing's happening. So let me get a path out. You can either get a path by drawing a line, and I would add a stroke to this just so that way you can see it. So I've just added a stroke. You can also just add a stroke by giving it a color. And now I can take my type on a path tool, I'm just zooming in, and I can start typing on this line by clicking on it. And now I can start typing. Okay, so this is just a straight line. This can get pretty cool though when, let's say, we use the pen tool, because you can make these really wild paths. I mean, you can kind of make a path anything that you want it to be. And let's say to fix this path, you just pull the handles. So these rounded points that have handles, those are called smooth points. This doesn't have any handles. This is called a curved point, a corner point. Anyway, so let's say we have this nice wavy line. We can start typing on this path too. We can type on this path as well. Okay, so how does this go into something more practical? Let's say my book is about Jupiter. So I'm going to make a planet. I just hit L. L gets me the ellipse tool. So I'm going to make a planet. I'm going to fill it in. I'm not really sure what color Jupiter is. I'm going to make it green. And now I'm going to make a path that will be the ring around Jupiter. So I'm going to use my pen tool, and I'm going to drag out so I can get some points, and I'm going to drag over here. And this doesn't need to be a very dramatic line. I just want it to have an arc into it, so that way it has more depth to it. And I'm going to give it a color. Eventually, I'll probably want to take that color down, so that way all we see is the text. Okay, so I have my Jupiter and I have my ring. Now I'm going to pull out my type on a path tool, and I'm going to click on that line, and now I can write Jupiter, and I think that it's not possessive, and it's moons. Okay, so now I'm going to make this bigger. I can also mess around with the line spacing. Say I wanted to change the type. That looks pretty neat. I don't know what font that is. Shackleton. Maybe it needs to be smaller. And I'm just messing around. I think that this right here is a problem. So over here, I could maybe fix that to separate. I'm just adding some space between the letters. And now if I hit W, I can get to preview mode. This has too much space. Okay. Now I can even change how, I could change where the text starts on this line. Let's say if I want to get my type on a path tool back. I'm going to hit W. I want to not be in my type tool when I do that though. So do you see, and this will just get us out of preview mode. Do you see how I have this white box, and when I hit the box, when I'm hovering over the box, you can see an arrow that lets me move where the line is, where the text is starting. So you can kind of move, undo. You can move around, and you want to wait to touch it until you see that arrow. Anyway, so this is something that you can do typing on a path. If you wanted, you could, let's say, type around the path. Let's add that stroke. And then you could type here. Well, you'd want to have the type on a path tool chosen. And now you can type over here. Okay, what do you do when you're done with your, when you have your words? Usually I like to turn my path off. And that way you see the text, but you don't see the path. And I think that makes it look a little more seamless. Another thing you could do, let's say you do want your line to show up. I think that it looks a lot better. You don't want your text hovering on top of the line. That is kind of distracting. But what you can do is kind of shove the text over. You can make it go up. What this is right here is it's kind of the superscript function. And what it does is it lets you move the type. Let's just look at it in a regular word, regular text box. Okay, so this is a regular text box, and what I'm doing is I'm using this function to move. The baseline is where the text falls on, and what this does is it moves your text above your baseline, which could be cool. Let's say you want your word to be floating. Let's get rid of this. Anyway, but what I'm doing here is I'm using it uniformly for all the words. So that way it moves my type away from the line. And this is just in case you actually want to keep your line, but you don't want the line, you don't want the words to be kind of just hugging the line, since this will give it more breathing space. And that's how you use the type on a path tool.